Hi, my name is Misty Eichinger. I'm a senior communication studies student and I have a minor in digital media. Obviously, this is my senior capstone final presentation. This is meant to be a representation of everything that I've learned throughout my minor and a showcase of my digital media abilities. So moving on, this is the schedule of my presentation. First, I'm going to review the project description, the problem space, and the scope, and then we'll go over the project process and steps. I'll tell you my requirements, then we'll talk about the paper prototype and cognitive walkthrough, the 5-person usability test, and the 20-person usability test. So in order to create this project, first I had to identify a problem. And then what we did was create a mini case study by looking at other websites or digital media products that embodied what we wanted to create or had certain aspects that we liked or that we found that didn't like or that didn't work. And then we created requirements for our project based off of those findings. After that, we sketched up paper prototypes and then created a cognitive walkthrough that we tested on users. And then through those cognitive walkthrough results, we were able to create our digital prototype. And then with that digital prototype, we tested that on 5 users. Then after that, we did a second digital prototype, which we were able to take the results from the first digital prototype and make it a little bit better. And then we tested that on 20 people. And then after that, we would make changes to the final site. So my revised project description is an interactive website that teaches users about tropical fats and oils. The information will come from health professionals that already utilize digital media tools in order to teach users to seek information from credible sources and look for credentials while reading information online. And instead of explaining my problem space again, I'll show you a short clip that kind of illustrates it.
Right now that is passing for medical information.
Dave, I got so frustrated with patients coming to me with printouts from the internet that had false information in them. Don't take your vaccine, all you need is garlic. Colonics will cure you from every possible disease, and they bring them to me, and I thought, okay, I've got 2 choices. I can continue to have them bringing these, or I can get out there and create a blog and give them good information and help them understand what's really true.
How do you
So this is just an example of a medical professional that is fed up with people just taking uncredible information from the internet and trusting it without looking into who wrote it or where it's coming from. And she kind of talks about how this is contributing to our misinformation or our misinformed perception of different health information. And so that's why I wanted to create a digital media project that would sort of solve this problem. So this site attempts to eliminate some of that harm and confusion that revolves not knowing about different fats and oils and how they should be used for health benefits and which ones shouldn't be used because they take away from your health. The audience is health-conscious individuals who regularly use the internet for health information. Those people who are going to blogs and things like that for medical advice. And it's targeted towards all genders. The outcome is the site should develop a more conscious consumer of health information online. And tactics I will use is to get the users to learn about tropical oils through interactive and colorful images and icons. So after we conducted our case study, I found that I wanted these 4 requirements. Number 1, effectiveness. I wanted to make sure that the site made the user think differently about these different types of fats and how they receive information online. Learnability, because I wanted to make sure that they were absorbing the information that they were learning and not just reading over it and going on with their lives. Memorability, kind of the same thing. I want to make sure they're actually retaining the information and they remember what they see. Safety, since I'm giving them information that impacts their health, I wanted to make sure that I was giving it in an ethical and responsible ways. And so moving on, this is my paper prototype. And for this paper prototype, we created a cognitive walkthrough. So we created sort of task for the users to do and then watch them do that. So what I wanted to do was have some sort of a flashcard page where people would click on something and then it would flip over and they would read the description on the back. This was pretty straightforward and people didn't have a problem doing that. And then going through these other pages, I'm going to show you 4 different things that I took away from my paper prototype. These are the things that I intended to include in the digital prototype because they were very straightforward to the user and no one seemed to have a problem with using these and they enjoyed using these. So, and this is sort of a slideshow, it's pretty universal. And then comparable charts and a label reader where you can scroll over something and then a bigger image pops out. So what I did with my paper prototype was, since I created 3 different website-like paper prototypes, they were all kind of similar. I just took out the most popular aspects of those and then created it into one digital prototype. So that would include all those pages above, the flashcards, the slider, the charts, and the label reader. And I also wanted to include a quiz to see if the users were retaining the information, and then a nutritionist page to nutritionist/reference page to ensure that the users are getting credible information. And so moving on to the digital prototype. For the reading the labels section, I had the users scroll over an image and then another image of the back of the product would show, and it would highlight the areas that I wanted the user to notice. And although I thought this was interactive, this didn't respond well with users. They did not think that my site was very interactive. They rated it very interactive on the surveys, but then when I talked to them in person, people admitted to me that they were just being nice, that they didn't really think that it was that interactive or that cool. So I thought that I had to change this. And then for the flashcards, this is what the digital prototype looked like. People thought that it was very text heavy. Someone said, "Why do I need a site like this?" So they didn't understand why the information was important to them. And then once you go over to the quiz, it was also a lot of information, and people didn't get the questions right, and they didn't want to read through everything. Someone said it was too much to read, and it was too text heavy. So that tells me that I need to reduce the amount of text in it, and so eventually I decided to just take the quiz out altogether. And this was the nutritionist page, which it would just, if you scrolled over it, a quote would pop up. And so after I did this usability test, I came across this quote, which says, bear in mind that just because you can use exciting animations doesn't mean you should. The test question is always, will it contribute to the learning process? So that made me eliminate a lot of aspects of this because I realized I was starting to use animated things just because I could, and I didn't think about if it would help the learner retain the information, or if it would help the memorability or the effectiveness. And so some changes that I did was I changed the theme altogether. Instead of having it just fats and oils, I changed it to tropical oils, which would include palm oil and palm kernel oil and coconut oil. So those are three things that I could focus on so that the learner could retain the information easily. And I also had a chart that I don't have a picture of anymore, but it just, there were colorful blocks and they jumped around, but it didn't really add any, it didn't really help the learner retain the information. It didn't help the learning process. So I changed that. And I added multiple pages and tabs for more organization instead of having it just on one page that the user could scroll through and get confused. I removed the quiz because I didn't think it was working. I didn't think it retained anyone's interest, and I changed the nutritionist page to images of their sites instead of just the pictures so that the user could see that this nutritionist is active online already, and so you can just go to their site to get information there instead of from some other uncredible blog. And I found that in my 5-person usability test, everyone said that they did not look for credentials while viewing my site. And then over to the right, you can see this is from my 20-person usability test. I looked for credentials while viewing this site. The median was 3, so that's a big improvement from 0. So obviously, the way I presented the credentials was more beneficial to the learner than just putting it at the end of the site. So these are my flashcards. They're pretty much the same from my other, from my first digital prototype. So what I'm going to do with this is drastically reduce the amount of text in the boxes. So when the user clicks on it, it flips over, they know exactly, or they can read it in a few seconds, and then click and then flip it over and go to the next one. With this one, you may have to squint, and it takes them a while to learn it and retain the information, but I don't think people really want that in a site. And this is the reading labels that I changed. So this is going to allow the user to click on a bunch of things in one sort of section instead of just having one product. So they can click around on the different labels, and this is a little text heavy too, so what I would do is reduce that amount of information also. And then this is the interactive chart that I made. So where you see it says palm oil and the options are listed on the left side, and this allows the user to click on the circle if they want to view it bigger or see more, instead of just, this is still interactive, the site moves around or the chart moves around, but the user's in control of it and they use it to their benefit. It's not unnecessary movement. And for the usability, final usability for the nutritionist page, this is kind of what the final site looks like, except I will put the nutritionist names with their credentials underneath of it. And I also plan on putting references underneath of it. So it'll have a section of the sources that I use throughout the site, and also in a cited form. So they'll be able to see where the information comes from throughout the site, and they'll also be able to refer to all of it at the end of the nutritionist page, just to make it a little bit more credible for the user. So I found that when I asked the user if they felt better about reading the information on the site because the credentials were listed, the median was 1. So people admitted that this helped them. They felt more safe reading the information, so that was great. So changes for the final website, again, I'm going to put a reference page under the nutritionist section. I'm going to take some of the information out of the slideshow and turn it into easily digestible, fun interactives that will also benefit the learner, and I'll also shorten the text on the flashcards. So in summation, that was my final project. I enjoyed making it, and I hope you enjoyed learning about it, and thank you so much. Hi, my name is Misty Eichinger. I'm a senior communications